A chocolate factory in Dunedin is looking to expand its operations and hopes to put Pacific cacao beans on the map. The chocolate brand Koko sources its cocoa directly from farmers from Vanuatu, Solomon Islands and Papua New Guinea. Only 1% of the world's cacao is grown in the Pacific region. Alicia Food met with Indigenous Māori chocolatier Tipene Ngāpaki from the chocolate brand Koko.
All of the cacao that we're bringing from the Pacific, so it's fairly traded from the farmers who grow it, right? So for me, it's really important that Indigenous people are paid correctly. I'm tangata whenua, I'm Māori, and for me that just really matches my own personal ethics, which is why, it's important. I mean, the other thing as well, that there's only 1% of the world's cacao is produced in the Pacific, so it's got a unique flavour compared to some of the other chocolate in the world as well.
Talk to me about the flavour of the chocolate. Why is it so special?
Yeah, so I mean, we're pretty lucky in the Pacific. We've got really beautiful climates and environment and soils and stuff like that. So for example, I like working with our Vanuatu beans. They've got like a nice fruity quality to them. PNG beans, for example, if you sort of think, in your head what you sort of imagine PNG, like the jungles and the rugged terrain, the beans are a lot more robust as well. So, the beans kind of match their environments to a degree as well. And they all taste different depending on the farms too. So there's a lot of variance batch to batch.
Could you break down kind of where the cacao beans come from and that relationship between farmer to the Dunedin operation?
Yeah, absolutely. So with regards to the locations, so we currently are sourcing our beans from Vanuatu, the Solomon Islands and Papua New Guinea. So primarily most of our chocolate that we produce with a PNG base comes from the Markham Valley region. It comes from a number of small different farms, and the way it sort of works is they've got representation in Papua New Guinea, and they make sure that the farmers get a fair cut of the bulk sales to different parts of the world, stuff like that. Similarly, the same is true with Vanuatu and also with the Solomons as well. So the Solomon Islands, again, we get it from collectives, and similarly with our Vanuatu beans as well. So it's all brought through ethical channels, basically. It's not the global chocolate cartel sort of deforesting and all of that sort of thing.
How do you think the future of the chocolate industry needs to go, seeing that sustainability is becoming a lot more important to people?
Yeah, so I mean, the chocolate industry historically, to put a blunt spin on it, it's been built off the back of slavery and predominantly off the backs of Indigenous people throughout the world, Africa, the Pacific, and South and Central America. So we basically have flipped that on its head entirely. The thing that we do that's quite different from other manufacturers, especially more commercial manufacturers, they tend to bring in most of their bulk chocolate from Europe, and so they've got hands off where the beans are sourced, they've got hands off all of the production. For us, it's really important that there's no slavery in our chocolate. So even our sugar, like the two key components are cacao beans and sugar in chocolate, and they both generally have pretty unethical sources. Our sugar is also fair trade. It comes in from South America. Again, the same sort of collective farm sort of situation where the growers are all paid a fair rate. So it's really, really important to the company that every part of this is ethical, from the moment it's planted to the moment that it's eaten.
I'm keen to know about the farmers that are based in the 3 different Pacific nations that you guys source your cacao beans from. Do you know much about the farmers, and is it a family operation? And what do you think the impact is on Pacific communities who have partnerships with brands like Ocho? How important is it for the economy, for people, for families, that money gets funneled back into the Pacific?
It's extremely important for developing countries and countries that have traditionally been plagued by colonisation and problems around those sorts of things. I think it's incredibly important that Indigenous people are empowered to actually determine their own future. It shouldn't be up to outsiders to sort of determine where those countries go, and I think that making sure that the actual farmers themselves get paid a fair amount means that they're not reliant on developed countries feeding them and establishing schools, etc. They can actually do these things for themselves, and they can lead the direction in which those things also go.
What's your message to consumers that are really keen to buy a block of chocolate but are starting to think a little bit more about the living wage, where their cacao bean is being sourced, and the process of that, if they're looking to kind of weigh up their options? What would you suggest?
Just be a bit more mindful about where your luxury items and your commodity items are coming from, especially things that have traditionally, been coming from what were previously colonies. Usually these things tend to have a fairly unethical backstory if you scratch a little bit deeper. The other thing to consider as well is your food miles. So another good reason to be eating things that are made a little bit closer to home.